This year, like many others, I waited in line to buy the newest Nintendo Switch 2, sequel console to the first Switch. Though the price is higher than we all wished for, the console is powerful and it already has two heavy lifter exclusives in Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza, as well as the lovely expansion pack to my beloved Kirby in the Forgotten Land. At the same time, however, I did rediscover my old Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo's handheld console that was active between 2011 and 2018. There were some games I wanted to catch up with that I did not play back then. So, between one big Switch 2 release and the other, I gave my 3DS a second life, rediscovering the joys of playing on the go. And while of course the Switch 2 has newer and flashier games, I did realize that the portability of both consoles is nothing alike. I mean, just look at this picture of my consoles side by side. One I can put in my pocket, while the other with its casing takes half the space in my backpack. This might sound like a minor complaint, but the rabbit hole goes deeper. It is my belief that modern handheld consoles such as the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck have actually a very different game design philosophy behind their development, one that is very different from the DS's and the PlayStation Portables. But first things first, roll the intro. Before explaining the core design differences between the handheld consoles from the past and the ones from today, I believe it makes sense to make a small recap of the history of portable consoles, but don't worry, I will keep it brief. For a long time, between the 90s and the 2010s, there were two very distinct types of game devices, home consoles and portable consoles. To oversimplify just a bit, portable devices were usually much less powerful than their home console counterparts. A PSP was no match for a PlayStation 3, a Game Boy Color was no match for Nintendo 64, and so on. As a rule of thumb, the generations of portable consoles roughly match the capabilities of the home consoles released 2 generations back, and Nintendo 3DS for instance has similar specifications to the Nintendo GameCube. If you see gameplay footage of Luigi's Mansion in both consoles, you can see the similarities. Another clear example would be the Game Boy Advance to the SNES. The GBA feels like a portable Super Nintendo, with many games sharing similar sprite palettes to the older home console. Again, there are games like Super Mario World that showcase the similarities in raw processing power. You get the idea, dedicated portable consoles were 2 gaming generations behind, with of course the great advantage of being much smaller and running on batteries rather than 100 watts from the wall. Nowadays, since the Switch is hybrid and the Steam Deck runs games available on PC, such a difference is no longer that present, making portable consoles lower-end versions of the current generations rather than their own thing. This entails that between the 90s and the 2010s, gaming on a portable console was a different experience. Games had to be designed based on the less powerful but portable hardware. That is why Assassin's Creed for the PS3 and the one for the DS look and play nothing alike, despite being released around the same time. You might think that portable consoles just got ports from older home titles and call it a day, and sure, some games like Super Mario 64 DS and Kirby's Epic Yarn for the 3DS do exist, but most titles designed for these consoles were made with a very different mindset in mind, one that highlighted the portability of the console itself. Let us take Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS as an example. At first, you might think that it's a regular Mario game just like Super Mario 3D World for the Wii U, just not in HD. Same themed worlds, same control scheme, same enemies, same secret collectibles, and so on. And yet, the structure of the gameplay is completely different. 3D World for the Wii U focuses on big levels, designed with 4 players in mind and all the time in the world to explore them. On the other hand, levels in 3D Land are much more compact, more dense, just like the console they are in. The focus is not on using Mario's moveset to run around the level, but rather to use it to optimize routes and clear efficiently every obstacle. The same could be said for the Pokémon games. The RPG titles released on the GameCube had a much greater focus on the story rather than the adventure. Since the Game Boy titles were designed to be played on short amounts of times on the go, dialogues were kept brief and the action-packed, filled with very brief cutscenes when compared to the home console. Now that all Pokémon titles are by definition on home consoles, you can see Game Freak trying to adapt their core philosophy to a newer hardware, not quite hitting the mark. Many were the series that had to adapt to this new reality, again, not much from a hardware perspective, but from a game design one. The sole games that are made with portability in mind are smartphone apps, since those only run on phones and tablets. All other video games that are released for the Switch 2 or on the Steam Deck are titles that can and are played on the big screen. Any new release, no matter the scale, cannot take for granted that their titles will be played on the go. Sure, in theory The Witcher 3 can be played on modern portable consoles, so in theory it can be considered a portable game, but the developers had to assume that the vast majority of players are either on PC or played with the Switch docked. Can you truly consider any game in your digital library portable? A game like Animal Crossing New Horizon definitely feels home when played on handheld, but again, there are considerable portions of people who played it on their TVs. When designing a game, developers cannot mandate players to solely experience a new entry one way or the other. Another reason why older portable games feel different, especially played today with an emulator, is because portable and home consoles were sold at different ranges of prices. A home console like the PS4 when it was active would cost around 300 euros after launch, with the average game sold at 60. At the same time, the average 3DS would be found even at 100 euros on sale, with games sold at 40. This entails that portable games were slightly more budget, not bad per se, but a game for the DS would usually be briefer and focus more on the immediate gameplay. You can't exactly put the hour-long, fully directed cutscenes of Yakuza 0 into a 3.3-inch screen for people to watch without pause while they're playing in school. Games would assume the user would play in small bursts of times here and there, maybe while riding the bus with no headphones, maybe during a lunch break, or maybe even when waiting for the main course at a restaurant. What game could not offer in technical performance and narrative experience, they would compensate with an easy-to-pick-up gameplay. If anything, since portable consoles became powerful enough to indeed run Yakuza 0's director cut, the devices, and especially the screens, were made bigger than ever, removing completely the need for pocket-sized consoles like the 3DS, that again, I remind you with this picture, to be extremely smaller than the current Switch 2. Since no modern game has to face this limit anymore, games using the old portable philosophy are simply a relic of the past. A Short Hike by Adam Robinson Yu kinda recalls those aesthetics and the way to make games, but this indie title is one in a million, definitely not the norm. I do not want to close up this essay with a sentimental statement such as portable games were better back then, because that is not the conclusion I want to reach. Rather, in this video, I want to remark that there is a structural difference on how game developers see the portable gaming world, no longer as its own unique universe, but rather as a means to port over already existing games. I do have some nostalgia to the easiness of the simplicity a portable console like this one had when compared to modern hardware. It is neither a good or a bad thing that this era is gone, just an observation. We will hardly ever see games designed with this immediateness in mind, with this work with what you have mentality that at the time inspired developers to find creative ideas. I believe and hope the Switch 2 will have wonderful games like all Nintendo consoles before her, but I am afraid we are not going to see the smaller, dedicated portable consoles like before. At most, lighter versions that are a bit more accommodating inside, but definitely not a new Nintendo 3DS. Video game consoles have changed quite a bit in the last decades, slowly yet so fast at the same time. Many of us recall a time where video games on the go felt different, not necessarily better or worse, but different, despite the fact that the Switch 2 is still quote-unquote portable. In my opinion, this is not just a nostalgia factor, but rather a clear change in game design, in how games are made. The 3DS and the PS Vita are the last dedicated portable consoles, hardwares dedicated to be played on the go that did not mimic or mix with their home counterparts. I suppose smartphones are the sole remaining hub for games designed to be played on the bus, but we all know it's not quite the same. Still, if you do want to experience this way of playing, go to your local second-hand store. You might be surprised to experience how handheld gaming used to be. If you made it this far, I wanted to thank you one too many 3DS times for watching today's video. Not my longest discussion this time around, but I wanted to share my 2 cents on the new Switch 2 and on the recently repurposed 3DS I both got this year. What is your take on the topic of portable gaming? I wish you all a wonderful day, and until next time, arrivederci!